Hello there. Welcome in to a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is, of course, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. That is the text and the phone line, or you can always find me on Twitter at Gingerly Tweets. So let's pick up to an extent where we left off yesterday. One of the big stories was Courtland Sutton signing that 4-year, $92 million extension. Sean Payton was kind of mum on the whole thing yesterday because when he spoke, the deal was not done. Now the deal is, and here's Sean Payton being very glad that Courtland Sutton is under contract for the next few years.
He epitomizes like what we're looking for, and then you match that with his play, and I mean, just each box you're checking. Leadership, work ethic. I'm excited for him and for the club.
And what he's looking for from a wide receiver perspective for who Courtland Sutton is as a strictly a football player, size. Sean Payton, when it comes to wide receivers, certainly has a type. And we've seen with, bringing in Devon Vele, Pat Bryant, he's continuously looking for the same body types, the same skill sets that he had in New Orleans. And Marcus Colston's name was thrown around a little bit today by Sean Payton. But what's funny is that Courtland Sutton didn't come in when Sean Payton did. In many ways, Sean Payton inherited the best. Everybody else he had to bring in to terraform the Denver Broncos into the New Orleans Saints. Courtland Sutton was already there. So that's what Sutton is as a wide receiver that Sean Payton likes so much. But beyond that, he likes the fact that Courtland Sutton at a position that has a lot of egos, some well-founded, some not. Courtland Sutton seems like an egoless player. Didn't hold out, didn't even allude to any displeasure with the fact that an extension was not done last year. He had the game against New Orleans, coincidentally, where he was not targeted once. And he was grinning on the sideline, just excited that the Denver Broncos were whooping up on the Saints. That's what Sean Payton may like most of all about Courtland Sutton, because so many people at his position, more accomplished and sometimes less accomplished than Courtland Sutton, carry a big ego. And Courtland Sutton has not the entire time he's been in Denver. And in fact, the idea about not showing any displeasure, Courtland Sutton talked about that today because he had no doubt that an extension was going to get done.
That the last thing that I wanted to be was a distraction, and that's what I've done my entire career, and that's what I want to continue to do, is not be a distraction. How can I do things the best way I possibly can for this team and for this organization to continue to stay in the light of progress and moving forward? And like I said, the communication was great, and I knew that something was going to eventually get done, and that's what I had to hold steadfast on.
And I can talk about Courtland Sutton, what he is or is not as a wide receiver. But the guy has been a perfect Denver Bronco. And what I mean by that is through the really dark days that this team has had, through the better days, has been the same guy. While his numbers have never been eye-popping, he has been pretty consistent throughout his career so far. Obviously, you have to take into account the knee injury he suffered and then the recovery from that. But he's been great. He's been everything that the Broncos could reasonably ask him to be. And I talked about this yesterday. Those are guys that it's very easy to take care of. One, because they're not that expensive. And two, it sends a message inside the locker room and around the league that you take care of your guys. You do the right thing. You produce at a decent level. You're going to be rewarded. And perhaps no matter what the price tag was, to an extent, I mean, Courtland Sutton's not going to play for pennies on the dollar. But Courtland Sutton made it known that he wanted this thing to get done, and he didn't want to even think about going anywhere else in his NFL career.
The biggest thing for me was being able to be here and, bring back, the years that Broncos fans have known. The organization has such a long historic tradition of being successful. And you all know that, I've been here through the thick and the thin. And, there's a lot of promise on the other side of the horizon here.
And if you've been through all of the seasons that Courtland Sutton has been through, and finally the franchise looks like it's pointing in the right direction, how could you not want to be a part of it? Like, I've been dealing with it this long. It's time to start winning some football games, and I'm going to go somewhere else and after this year and cash in, maybe for more money. Who knows? You get out on that free agency market, and maybe a team like a Carolina Panthers is like, you know what? We'll sign you for more money. But what kind of a situation would Courtland Sutton be in? He's seen it through this long. He might as well see it through to the Broncos achieving something, even more than what they did last year. When all is said and done with Courtland Sutton, it's going to be an interesting conversation. Because I don't foresee Courtland Sutton winning a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. And this is an organization that when you think of other wide receivers, well, other players for that matter, how many of the players in recently, I guess, in my lifetime, I understand what happened before Pat Bowlen took over and all of that kind of stuff. But really, since Elway, you look at a lot of these players, they have Super Bowl rings. And this franchise is about winning Super Bowls. That's the standard. And they've won enough that it should be the standard. But if Courtland Sutton never wins a Super Bowl, but stays with the Denver Broncos for the vast majority of his career, right? It's so difficult to say someone's going to be a lifer, right? And I can run down the list. Easiest one, Peyton Manning was in a cult for life. A sentence that would have been unthinkable as recently as a year before he got hurt. To think that Peyton Manning would finish his career anywhere other than Indianapolis. So I think the odds are on the side that Courtland Sutton will not be a Denver Bronco for the entirety of his career. He may be, but he's going to spend all the important years of his career, his prime, in Denver. He's going to put up his best seasons in Denver. But if he doesn't win, how is he looked at? I mean, he can't be on the level of Rod Smith. He can't be on the level of Ed McCaffrey. Can't be on the level of Demaryius Thomas. But all time, he's probably going to have very good numbers for a Broncos wide receiver. It may be just behind those guys. Is he a Ring of Famer? Because I've said that Ring of Fames versus Hall of Fame. Like Ring of Famers, it's more about what you meant to that particular team than what you meant to the game of football, obviously, right? I think Courtland Sutton is going to have a special place in Broncos fans' hearts when all is said and done. Because of what he's talking about there, because of the fact that he stuck through lean years and he was the consummate professional and he always had a smile on his face. And I do sense from Broncos fans, they're a little protective of the guy, not just because he's wearing a Broncos uniform, but Courtland Sutton feels like a Bronco. He's Broncos fans' guy. Right, because there are a fair amount of people in the last 24 hours, and I guess I have to be somewhat grouped into this. I don't think I'm being too harsh on Courtland Sutton when I talk about him being a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL, but definitely not top 15. But I've seen a kind of a rally around him. And I think it comes from the fact that he's stuck around and he's been here through all these lean years, and now it looks like things are going to get good, and he's still, as of right now, an important piece to what they're doing. It's not like he's been supplanted on the depth chart. So he'll be an interesting conversation because I do think there will be a fair amount of people who will think he should be acknowledged because he's going to be among the leaders all time receiving for the Denver Broncos. And yeah, he's not Rod Smith. He's not a McCaffrey. He's not Demaryius Thomas. But that doesn't mean there's not room for him. So, I mean, it's more conversation when we get there because what is this Broncos team going to accomplish? We don't know. But for a fan base that is very much steeped in ring culture because they've experienced it. And if Courtland Sutton is ringless, is that going to be, how's he going to be viewed? I think it's going to be fascinating. But for right now, I think he's one of the most beloved Denver Broncos players. And he's been one of their most productive. Can't take that away from him. 719-247-1313. Your thoughts on Courtland Sutton's extension. Coming up next, let's talk still offense for the Denver Broncos, but a different aspect. Let's talk about the run game. Broncos are changing some things up to try and spark one of the league's worst rushing attacks. Why I think ultimately it'd be a good thing for the Denver Broncos, but maybe not good for one player in particular in that running back room. Whether you're a student, a teacher, or a parent, we could all use a little extra cash as we head back into the school year. That's why we're giving you the chance to overhaul your closet or your classroom with a back-to-school shopping spree. 5 winners will each take home $1,000. Head to extrasports1300.com now to enter for your chance to win $1,000 in the back-to-school shopping spree. Garrett Bowles yesterday mentioned that the Broncos now have some guys that can stretch out the outside zone game for us, meaning the outside running game. And Sean Payton today spoke about how important it is for the Broncos run game to, above all else, be more explosive than they were a year ago.
And we've got to be more explosive in that area. And so we first look at ourselves, the scheme and are we doing it the way we want to? And then we're looking at who are we asking to do it with? And obviously we've added some players in the running back room, and we're going to be much improved in that area.
And clearly this is a sore spot for the Denver Broncos last year. They just couldn't run the football. And it's actually quite remarkable that Bo Nix had the year he had, given that most weeks opposing teams had no fear of the Denver Broncos running the football. Because they were relying on Javonte Williams, who just never recovered from the ACL. And I don't think that he's in for a big year necessarily in Dallas, just for the record. But Sean Payton has been talking about it all offseason, how they wanted to address the running back room in multiple ways. And now with Garrett Bowles' comments, somewhat confirmed by Sean Payton, although he didn't go into what schematically they're doing, he acknowledged that they're maybe going to be doing some different things. So the outside run game, which everybody takes a step in one direction. You hand the running back starts to run to the sideline, and then the idea is if a lane opens up, you stop, cut back, hit the hole, and go, or you just keep following your blockers to the outside. And the two players, obviously, because they are the two new players in this running back room, J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, you are players that can succeed in that kind of run scheme. Jaleel McLaughlin is made for this, right? Look, the problem with Jaleel McLaughlin is to use one of Sean Payton's favorite phrases, the pitch count can't be high with him. And if somebody does get a hand on him, he's probably going to be tackled. And just because you institute this outside run game doesn't mean that defenders aren't going to get their hands on the Broncos running backs. And that was a big reason why, or a big thing that people talked about RJ Harvey, right? RJ Harvey is a guy that can break some tackles. So that's kind of the other part of this. But RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins both have shown they could be successful. Some of the traits they have are in Dobbins' case, you have some evidence of him being able to do well in a run scheme like this. So I think this is once again Sean Payton going into the offseason with a vision. I don't think the outside run thing is a reaction to, I ended up signing J.K. Dobbins and I drafted R.J. Harvey. maybe they would fit best in this. That's not what it's about, because we know that the Broncos had multiple opportunities to get more talented running backs than RJ Harvey. They wanted RJ Harvey specifically because I think Sean Payton already had this thought in his head that he wanted to maybe get out to the edge a little bit more, and RJ Harvey might allow him to do it. And J.K. Dobbins kind of the same way. So this, once again, is Sean Payton thinking after the season, okay, how am I going to get this run game going schematically? Maybe I need to change some things up. Now I got to go find guys that fit that vision. He's not reacting to the personnel he has. In Dobbins and RJ Harvey's case, he has an idea and he wants players that fit that. There's one player that I have not mentioned, and that is intentional. I don't know if this is what the Broncos are going to do moving forward, if this is great news for Audric Estime. It's not that he's incapable of running that way, but when you think of Audric Estime, you think of, halfback dives. Right? Part of his supposed ability to break tackles, run between the tackles, go right up the gut, that kind of thing. That's what you think of when you think of Audric Estime. So I already thought that in some ways drafting RJ Harvey was not great for Audric Estime. Getting J.K. Dobbins was even worse for Audric Estime. And now hearing some of maybe these scheme changes in the run game, I just think it's more bad news for Audric Estime. Does this mean he's cut? Not necessarily. But it just seems like the Broncos are moving away from the type of run scheme that Audric Estime would fit the best in. And more importantly, have gone out and gotten running backs that can do that. Sean Payton's already talked about at length a number of times how difficult it is to have multiple mouths to feed in the backfield. 3 specifically is the number he keeps going back to. It's tough to get 3 guys carries. And it was part of his reasoning for not giving Audric Estime more carries. When he started to, then Audric Estime fumbled, and then that was the end of that. Which is another Audric Estime storyline. Is he going to be able to hang on to the football enough? Because Sean Payton, as well as any football coach, you put the ball on the ground, that's the best way to be marooned to the island of misfit toys, is to put the ball on the ground. Well, I think Audric Estime has an uphill climb to be a contributor to the Denver Broncos this season because of the moves they've made. And if they are looking to get out on the edge a little bit more and run, it doesn't seem like that is the best way to utilize what Audric Estime brings to the table. And if it's just the run scheme alone, you look at it and you're like, I kind of put him 4th. And then you look at J.K. Dobbins being the veteran. You look at Jaleel McLaughlin with his limitations still. Last year, outside of Javonte Williams, was the most productive running back the Broncos had, for whatever that's worth. Certainly brings a different skill set to the table, but also fits this run scheme. And they drafted RJ Harvey. You kind of put Audric Estime 4th for that reason as well. So a player that the conversation could change very quickly about. I mean, think about, Audric Estime was one of the guys that Sean Payton talked about. Got to get him more carries, got to get him on the field a little bit more. Well, he's saying that, and it seems like the Broncos are doing a lot that is counter to that. But the name of the game for the Broncos, whether it's Estime, Dobbins, Harvey, or McLaughlin, get out to the edge more, find those cutback lanes, more explosive. And we know the benefit of this maybe more than anything else for the Denver Broncos. The run game gets going. Guess what it opens up? The play action. With Bo Nix, defensive coordinators having more tape on him, the league catching up, the Broncos not sneaking up on anybody, all that kind of stuff that we've talked about before, it's going to be even more imperative for the Broncos to present a threat of a run to be able to take the pressure off of Bo Nix just by running the football first and foremost. But again, the play action game, opening that up, rolling out Bo Nix, which you can do off of this kind of run scheme as well. Now you give Bo Nix a chance and the Broncos offense a chance to keep defenses a little bit more off balance. 719-24-7, 1313. Let's shift our focus. We'll stick with football, but I was prepared to talk about this yesterday, but obviously there was a much bigger and more important story coming out of Boulder. But let's get into it now. Let's talk about the football when it comes to Deion Sanders. The Big 12 preseason poll is out. And once again, the Buffs are not being highly thought of. What they can do to prove those people wrong, as they did last year. That's coming up next here on Extra Sports 1300. Switchbacks FC back in action Friday night at Widener Field, hosting Lexington SC for Next Generation Night, honoring the future of our community and the next wave of Switchbacks fans. Kickoff at 7 p.m. Fireworks to follow, of course. Seats are going fast, as you might expect. Get yours now at switchbacksfc.com. Question of the day. If I don't mention this, Ray, my remote producer, I suppose, Ray Dominguez, will be very upset with me. Question of the day: who will be the Broncos' leading rusher this season? Dobbins, Harvey, McLaughlin, and he threw Bo Nix in there. And I was talking yesterday about Bo Nix finding his superpower if he wants to be considered one of the best quarterbacks in the world. What's the thing with him? Maybe it's maybe secret sauce. What's Bo Nix's secret sauce that could make him one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? I like superpower better. Could it be his legs? I don't think so. Sean Payton today, once again, talking about how Bo Nix has got to be smart running the football, which I'm sure John Harbaugh says, Sean McDermott says, but when they say it, there's an acknowledgement of they're going to run the ball a lot. With Bo Nix, when Sean Payton talks about it, I don't know that he loves Bo Nix running the football. Or he looks at that as, while he's very complimentary of it and while he continues to be surprised, I think that Sean Payton very much wants Bo Nix throwing the football, and him running the football is not throwing the football and also risks him not being able to throw the football because he gets hurt. His running ability, his legs, better than expected. We're not talking about Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson here. But the question posed to you on our social media accounts: who will be the Broncos' leading rusher this upcoming season? I'm trying to decide between J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. My initial reaction was, oh, it's going to be J.K. Dobbins. Might be R.J. Harvey. Now, keep in perspective, I still would not suggest you taking R.J. Harvey high in your upcoming fantasy draft. Because, again, it's running back by committee, which makes the question interesting because you know that there's not one guy that Sean Payton's going to feature. But I think when all is said and done, it could be R.J. Harvey because they'll spread it out. But then again, Sean Payton don't love to give the rookies a lot of reps. It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside of an enigma. I will say that whoever leads the Denver Broncos in rushing will not be anywhere close to the leading rushers in the NFL. Well, I'll take your thoughts on our question of the day. So yesterday, Deion Sanders sharing his cancer diagnosis and the fact that he is cured. And that's what yesterday was about. And I don't blame anybody who was in Boulder yesterday for not asking about Caden Salter versus Julian Lewis. Probably not the time. You're going to get other chances to talk to Deion Sanders about that. You're going to get other chances to talk to Deion Sanders about football. That's not what yesterday was about. Nor was it on this show. But I'd like to talk some Buffs football if you'll allow me. Big 12 preseason poll came out. Buffs are picked 10th. Now, we have seen in recent memory that both preseason prognostications about the Colorado Buffaloes and just preseason prognostications in general in the Big 12, not great. Arizona State was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 last year. They won the conference and played in the college football playoff. Colorado Buffaloes picked very low. Ended up making a run at a Big 12 title game appearance. Finished fourth when all was said and done. But this year, if they're going to defy those expectations, those pretty low expectations, they're going to have to do it in a very different way than they did last year. And my fascination with this upcoming season for the Colorado Buffaloes is based around, as it probably is for many people, the fact that they don't have Travis or Shedeur. We know that the Big 12 is wild, and I have no reason to expect anything different. I think the Big 12 is going to be a roller coaster ride all the way through, no matter which team you root for. The teams that you think are going to be good are young at key positions. Teams that people don't think are very good brought in some transfers from other places that could be impact players. You know the way it works in college football today, especially the Big 12. I think it's going to be a wild season again. But the last, and I can even go back to the Pac-12 year for Deion Sanders. When the chips were down, when the Buffs had to have some amount of yardage or to prevent their opponent from getting a certain number of yards, they look at Travis and they look at Shedeur. Shedeur, throughout his time in Boulder, had to throw on that Superman's cape so often. And I like Caden Salter. I do. He's not Shedeur Sanders. I think Salter is a little bit more dynamic than people that I've seen are giving him credit for, but I fully acknowledge he is not Shedeur Sanders. If the Buffs are going to defy expectations this year and to once again show that the preseason voters in the Big 12 don't know a whole heck of a lot, they're going to have to be a more complete football team. There aren't a lot of players on this roster that Deion Sanders is going to be able to turn to like he did Shedeur and Travis Hunter. Which, especially with Travis, it's like that almost goes without saying. The guy played both sides of the football and was the Heisman Trophy winner. Like, teams don't constantly have those kind of guys on their roster. But even with Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders is not going to be able to ask Caden Salter to do what Shedeur did. If the Buffs are going to make a run at an appearance in the Big 12 title game, which is also making a run at a spot in the college football playoff, which Deion Sanders has repeatedly said is what they are looking to do, it will have to be because going into year 3, the Buffs have the most complete roster that they've had. It has to be that way. because from an individual standpoint, from a star power standpoint, they just don't have it. But they should be building towards this. Right? Maybe I think it should be. It should be the most complete roster. Or else there's a flaw in the way that the Buffs are building their roster. This is year 3. They should have accumulated more talent than they had in last year and certainly in year 1. So I think that the Buffs will have top to bottom the best roster that they've had. But ultimately, will that be enough? And it will be interesting to watch this Buffs team without a Sanders, without Hunter. Who's going to be the go-to receiver? Who's going to be the playmaker? Because you still need one of those. It's just you can't expect anybody to do it to the degree that especially Shedeur Sanders did last year. But Kaden Salter, and I'm talking about Kaden Salter because I think he's going to be the starting quarterback of the Buffs. But Kaden Salter's going to have a guy. Maybe it's Omarion Miller. But he's going to have a receiver that he goes to when he absolutely needs it. And I don't know that there's a clear-cut favorite for that. But if the Buffs are going to win this year, it's going to be because in all 3 phases and top to bottom in their roster, they're closer to a complete football team than they've ever been. And this year will really expose the holes on this roster. Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders covered up a lot of warts, filled a lot of roster holes this team had in terms of, well, they don't have this, or maybe their offensive line 1 through 5 isn't perfect, but Shedeur buying time with his legs, with his athleticism, could make plays. Travis Hunter takes away one side of the football field. That's not going to exist. So Deion Sanders has talked about, especially after year 1, they had to invest in the trenches, right? Get better on both sides of the line of scrimmage, the offensive line and the defensive line. And that was abundantly clear to him. Well, now what they need, what other places they need are going to come into focus. Because you're not going to have those elite playmakers that can cover up for some of your other shortcomings on this football team. And we'll really be able to talk about I don't want to say over-reliance, because if it works, then it's not an over-reliance. Then you're relying on it the exact right amount. But the reliance on the transfer portal, how much this team has gone into the portal to build their roster. And I'm sure that conversation's going on in many different places across the country. Because, as I said when this first started, once Deion Sanders has a little bit of success hitting the portal as hard as he is, watch everybody do it. And lo and behold, guess what's happening? So this is not a uniquely Colorado Buffaloes thing. I could be talking about any number of teams in college football. Has the portal worked? Has the ratio of portal to high school guys being very much tilted in the favor of transfer portal guys, has it worked? Has it built a more complete roster without the star power, without that top line talent? That's what we're going to find out. And while I do believe it's going to be Caden Salter that is ultimately the starting quarterback of the Colorado Buffaloes, if Deion Sanders, now that he's back with the team, and this is kind of part of the story yesterday, like Deion Sanders he's gotten reports. He's maybe seen some film. I'm not saying that he doesn't know any of these guys, but even he himself yesterday admitted that one of the most difficult things about his recovery was the fact that he didn't get to see his team. And now that he's back in Boulder, he's going to be watching these guys like a hawk. And if he evaluates what they have in practice leading up to the Georgia Tech game, and he looks at it and says, we don't have that complete roster, or as close to it as we have had since I've been in Boulder. Maybe we didn't address this. Maybe this guy isn't what we thought he was going to be for whatever the reason. I could see Deion Sanders, who has already left the door slightly ajar at Big 12 Media Days for Julian Lewis to get on the field. I could see, given how important this year is to the Colorado Buffaloes, to legitimize what Deion Sanders has been doing, for him to go, yeah, Caden Salter's steady. He's the veteran. He's the guy with more experience, and everything would say that you should start Caden Salter until it goes poorly, and then you can shift over to Julian Lewis. I could see Deion Sanders going, we don't overall have the talent. We're not top to bottom the best put together football team we've been. I need to bet a little bit on the ceiling of Julian Lewis. And live with the young mistakes that he's bound to make, because the ceiling is much higher than it is with Caden Salter. That if we're able to get a lot out of him, he can still not in the way that Shedeur did, but he can make up for some of the shortcomings on this roster. So I would say Caden Salter is the smart money. But if this roster, if this team isn't what Deion Sanders imagined they would be when he is able to watch them at practice, maybe that opens it up for the more talented of the two receivers, or of the two quarterbacks, the one with the more potential, and that is obviously Julian Lewis, being arguably the best high school quarterback in his class. Said arguably. Bryce Underwood's pretty good too. 719-247-1313. Buffs pick 10th in the Big 12 preseason poll. Fair to you or not? We'll continue on with this Tuesday edition of Drive Time Sports right after this. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this fine Tuesday in Colorado Springs. Glad to have you, although you don't have to be in Colorado Springs to be a part of the program, because not only do we stream the show online and on an app, the Extra Sports 1300 app, but we also have the show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at XTRA Sports 1300. And if you're consuming the show that way, I do appreciate you. We saw many a person watch some of the shows last week that we did from the Warrior games. And that was obviously great to see. If you missed any of those interviews that I did last week, some of those are going to start to hit your timelines on social media. So many interviews that I did. I'm looking at the list and I'm like, man, I did talk to a lot of people last week, and it was awesome. And we'll start sharing some of those as the week progresses. In the meantime, love to hear from you. 719-247-1313. ESPN put out a list today it was a ranking of all the NFL teams in terms of the amount of talent they had aged under 25. There had to be a more concise way that I could say that, but that's what I said. The most talent under the age of 25, ranking the NFL teams based on that, and the Denver Broncos came in dead last. Dead last. And I am here to tell you, one, not surprised, and two, that doesn't mean a dang thing when it comes to this year. The reason I'm not surprised is, first of all, you look to the top of the list. 6 of the top 10 teams in terms of talent under the age of 25 have a quarterback that is under the age of 25. The Broncos no longer do. Also, 9 of the top 12 teams on this list have been about 9 of the 12 worst teams in the NFL for a few years now. And as bad as things have gotten based on the Broncos standards, Broncos haven't had a number 1 pick. Right? I mean, wouldn't you expect the Carolina Panthers to have more talent under the age of 25 than the Denver Broncos? They've been picking at the top of the draft for years now. And that's just one team. You know, Tennessee's another team. And just think in your head some of the worst teams in the NFL over the last few years, and I promise you they're among the top 12 teams on this list. So you have to go into it thinking about some of those things. Like, the Broncos aren't going to rank highly on a list like this because they haven't been straight garbage for the last few years. They haven't been good, but they haven't been 2 wins, 3 wins. Right? And that's how you accumulate elite young talent. Also, some of the guys that you would still consider young, and I know I'm going to throw out Bo Nix, and people are going to make jokes about how Bo Nix is 35 years old. He just graduated, if you will, from this list. Okay, so he's still a young human being. But Bo Nix has aged out of this. Pat Surtain has now aged out of this. Nick Benito is now ineligible to be included to be considered to help the Broncos go up this list, and those are the three most important players on the Denver Broncos. And they're all they're all 25 or older. But also, hasn't it been very intentional the way that the Broncos have gone about it? Haven't you noticed that they do seem to really like guys that have a lot of college experience? And obviously, Bo Nix is the epitome of that. But look at some of the other draft picks that George Paton has made. These guys have played a lot of college football. Why? Because Sean Payton is not in it for the next 10 years or even the next 5 years. He wants to win quickly. And he knows that the draft is a vital piece to team building. And they got a hit on these draft picks. But he wants guys that he can watch a lot of film on. He wants guys coming into the draft or coming out of the draft that he can have a little bit more faith in. Maybe not in year one, as he's kind of shown so far. Don't love rookies necessarily outside of Bo Nix. But I'm talking like year two, right? Marvin Mims, by the way, qualifies for this list. We've seen Sean Payton find more of a role for a Marvin Mims as time has gone on. And while it might not be written somewhere on the whiteboard in Sean Payton's office or George Payton's office, draft older rookies, it does seem like the Broncos have kind of leaned in that direction a little bit. Plus, you throw on top of the fact that they have not drafted super high in the draft for years, and they also had that little issue where they didn't have a first-round pick for a little while, and they didn't have a second-round pick for a little while. Remember that? So it's really, you add all these things together, it's not surprising that the Denver Broncos rank very low on this list. They've given away some of their premium draft capital. Their premium draft capital has not been as good as the Titans or the Carolina Panthers or the New York Giants. And I do think that George Paton and Sean Payton have a bit of an affinity towards older draft picks. Again, Bo Nix being the best example of that. So none of this is really surprising. And none of this has any real impact on this upcoming season, which is the world that we're all living in right now. It's about what the Denver Broncos are going to be this year. I would almost say the fact that they have so little of their roster tied into players younger than the age of 25 could actually be viewed as a good thing for this year, because they're not incredibly young. But also, this speaks to a longer-term vision. Yeah, if you want to be doom and gloom about it, if you want to take this ranking and say, where is this going to actually hurt the Denver Broncos? I'll tell you when Bo Nix is getting ready to get paid. Now, they'll be able to accumulate some draft picks between now and then, obviously. But this does paint a picture of the Broncos' window to really maximize what they're going to be these next few years. They don't have a ton of young players that they can go into the future with Bo, right now, at least on the roster, for when Bo Nix does get paid. And you look at some teams, the Eagles and the Chiefs especially, they rank much higher on this list than the Denver Broncos. So they're built for success now, but they also have some of the groundwork to be successful in the future. I think really with the Denver Broncos, it's like the next 2 or 3 years. They really got to hit in the next 2 or 3 years, and you've seen them make moves to that end. They draft R.J. Harvey. All right, just let him be the number one running back. Nope, got to get J.K. Dobbins. They could have kept a younger safety next to Brandon Jones. Nope, Talanoa Hufanga. They could have played Drew Sanders next to Alex Singleton. I know the injury he just sustained, but the thought process could have been, well, we'll let Drew Sanders grow up in that position. Nope, Dre Greenlaw. The Broncos are acting like a team that at least wants to hit in the next 2 or 3 years. And so their roster is really built for the next 2 or 3 years, and maybe not the next 5. But again, I go back to, haven't you been waiting long enough for the Denver Broncos to be good in 5 years? I understand what this list is, and I can understand why the Broncos being ranked dead last in talent under the age of 25 could be problematic at some point. But the Broncos, I'm sure, ranked much higher on this list years ago, and it didn't get them very far. So I don't think there's any Bronco fan that's reading that list or listening to me talk about the list that is going, oh my God, the Denver Broncos don't have any talent under the age of 25, because it's now. The iron is hot now, and the Broncos are striking. They're not worried about 5 years from now. And maybe it's the NFL. I should move up the timeline. Like 3 years from now, they're not even worried about it. It is interesting to look. And I would say the Broncos aren't the only team in this boat. I would say the Nuggets and the Avalanche are very much in this boat. Especially the Avalanche. They just traded Oscar Olesen. Like one of the few, like just when you thought that the Avalanche were going to kind of settle down a little bit and maybe start to look more at their farm system and start to develop some guys, they trade Oscar Olesen for some guy from the Sharks that no one's ever heard of. So the Avalanche are definitely, I haven't seen a list, and I don't know the young talent on every NHL team and what their farm system looks like. It's not my wheelhouse. I know the NHL roster. I don't know AHL rosters very well. I would imagine the Avs are probably dead last on that list if they made one in the NHL. They have no young talent on that roster. And the Nuggets this year have pivoted from we're investing in our young talent to, yeah, no, we're going to go out and get free veterans. So I think the Avalanche and the Nuggets are very much in this same boat, which should make Broncos fans feel better, because what are the Avalanche and the Nuggets trying to do? Win a championship. That's where their focus is. That's where their mindset is. Broncos' mindset is there. Whether you believe they can get there or not is another question, but their mind is in very much the same place that the Nuggets and the Avalanche are. Funny enough, I think if you did this for Major League Baseball, the Rockies would be near the bottom of the list. Takes on a different meaning with them. Avalanche at the bottom of a list like this, the Nuggets, the Broncos, not really surprising and really not a big deal. If the Rockies were at the bottom of such a list, you would scratch your head a little bit. By the way, the players that would qualify, because I know Broncos fans love to rail against these kind of lists. How can the Broncos be dead last? Like, Ryan, I get what you're saying, and certainly maybe they're not one of the top teams in terms of young talent, but dead last, come on, that's a little harsh. Here are the guys that would qualify, at least in part. Audric Estime, Troy Franklin, Jonah Ellis, Marvin Mims, J.L. Skinner, R.J. Harvey, Jahdae Barron, Caleb Lohner, Lavelle Bailey, Jaleel McLaughlin. Second, Estime, we didn't see a lot of last year. Troy Franklin, we didn't see a lot of last year. Jonah Ellis, because of injuries, didn't see a lot last year. Marvin Mims, you feel good about. J.L. Skinner has been marginalized every year that's gone on. Harvey's a rookie. Barron is a rookie. Caleb Lohner, I think they got in the 7th round, or he's undrafted. Lavelle Bailey, Sean Payne had some nice things to say about him, but I don't know that he's a guy that you feel like has a super bright future. And then Jaleel McLaughlin. So really, Mims and McLaughlin, you've seen be productive players. You feel good about Jahdae Barron. Certainly, R.J. Harvey is a little bit of a mixed bag, I think, for a lot of people. It's like, if those are the players that are being judged, I'm not surprised that the Broncos are down on the list. I think they have something in Jonah Ellis. I think they've seen the best of Jaleel McLaughlin. Marvin Mims, certainly interesting, and I really like Jahdae Barron. R.J. Harvey, speaking of, question of the day, who will be the Broncos' leading rusher this season? I've decided I'm sticking with J.K. Dobbins. Because I think this new run scheme that they're employing will work well with J.K. Dobbins. I deviated there for a minute. I thought, could this be, Sean Payton trying to take some pressure off of R.J. Harvey by bringing in a veteran? No, I think that J.K. Dobbins will be the leading rusher of the Denver Broncos this season. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, who did you think made the call for the Browns to draft Shedeur Sanders? That guy is saying it wasn't him. Get into that next here on Extra Sports 1300. Riot Fest, a 3-day extravaganza of live music coming to Chicago this September, featuring headlining sets from Green Day, Blink-182, Weezer, Jack White, and more. And we're hooking up one winner with a VIP trip for two, including flights, hotel, of course, VIP tickets to Riot Fest, and just for good measure, $200 to raid the merch store. All you need to do to enter is text the national keyword Linda. That's Linda. You text that to 95819, and you are as good as entered, my friend. Prize is provided by Riot Fest, and you can find the complete contest rules at extrasports1300.com. This text coming in from Albert on the Colorado Buffaloes says the line play on both sides of the ball will be improved. Omarion Miller will be a breakout star at wide receiver. Martavius French will be a big addition at linebacker, and the D-line will make up for a softer secondary. Buffs go 8-4 and build for a big run in 2026. I agree with a lot of what you're saying here. Because I do think that the best thing that Deion Sanders can do is be able to put up a season similar to the last. And I know the natural inclination is, oh, this team's got to get better. They got to build. Well, you're losing Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Two guys who are in the rafters at Folsom Field, as a joke on a couple of different levels there. But the fact of the matter is you're losing those two guys. Can this team really be expected to win a bunch more than they did last year, to appear in the Big 12 title game? I don't think they'll get there. I don't. But if they maintain, if they don't take a step back, to Albert's point, that allows them to gear up with Julian Lewis being, okay, now maybe he's going to be the starter for the first time in year two, but he's going to spend a year learning, practicing. I'm sure we'll see him on occasion. So if the Buffs can do that, if they can be bowl eligible, and 8 wins, they don't even need 8 to be bowl eligible. But if they don't take a huge step back, that could mean some big things are going to happen the following year. But as I said, the roster construction of this Buffaloes team, what Deion Sanders and CU has been doing in the portal, we will get a really good idea on if this is working. Because they don't have anybody that I can see that right now is capable of throwing on his cape like Shedeur did, like Travis Hunter did, and save the Colorado Buffaloes like they were both asked to do many a time over the past couple of years. And that's why I'm really interested in this season, to fully evaluate the roster building that Deion Sanders has done. 8, maybe a little bit rich for my blood. But I think if they're close to what they were last year, given what they lost, I think you can deem that absolutely a good season for Deion Sanders. And then here comes the real pressure. I don't think there's pressure for Colorado to win the Big 12 this year. And it's certainly not. They were picked 10th. There's no pressure for them to win the Big 12. There's no expectation for them to make any noise in the Big 12 this year. So if they don't lose a ton, if they don't backslide a bunch, that's a good year for Deion Sanders. And then it's all right. This is real. He can do it without his son. He can do it without Travis Hunter. And then the real expectations get put on the Colorado Buffaloes. It'll be an interesting year. I also saw this from ESPN today. One of the teams that they pointed out, they did teams that they expect to sustain what they did in 2024, and then the teams they expect to, bounce back from 2024. And Air Force was specifically mentioned as a team to watch out for in this regard. And it's for the same reason that I just talked about them a week or two ago. Don't write off the way that Air Force finished last season. It's not about momentum one year to the next. But what it is about is a young group that was inexperienced reaching a tipping point in terms of the amount of football they're playing, and maybe they started to figure some things out. Their offensive line is going to have some continuity to it. They have key players in the running game coming back. They got Peyton Zadroik on the defensive side of the football. And one thing that ESPN mentioned that a lot of preseason prognosticators are mentioning, last year was just so out of character for Air Force. There is really this belief that Air Force is always going to be at a certain level. And last year, dipping below that is so unlike them. I guess the word I would use is respect. There's a level of respect there for Troy Calhoun and what this program has been, that for them to be as bad as they were to start last year is really surprising. It's not when you really dig into it because of the inexperience, how much of the roster that they lost. But for people that follow college football and see Air Force putting up bowl eligible, beating, Power 5 teams in bowl games, it was a little bit out of character, but there was a reason for that. And I think late in the season, you saw, I don't want to say the benefits of last season because it was difficult for everybody, but some of the fruits of the labor that Air Force put in. And I think that they're going to have what will be characterized as a bounce back year from what they were last year. But always notable when Air Force gets some national attention, like ESPN gave them in a piece today. Getting back to CU, or a player that used to play for CU. So Browns owner Jimmy Haslam says that he didn't order the code red. He did not tell Andrew Berry to take Shedeur Sanders. The thought was when the announcement was made that Shedeur was picked by the Browns, and then they showed the Browns war room, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski looked like they were coerced into taking Shedeur Sanders. That's what they look like. I'm not saying they were, but that's what they look like. And the thought was, well, this had to be the owner. Jimmy Haslam wanted some box office. Wanted the Browns to be a story. I don't blame people necessarily for reacting, especially after they took Dylan Gabriel. You're wondering why. I mean, that was what was funny about that whole situation is Shedeur keeps falling and falling in the draft. And you're like, well, somebody's got to take him here soon. But if you looked at the teams that you expected, because the Browns just took Dylan Gabriel, you're like, well, not the Browns, obviously, but somebody else, and it was the Browns. But Jimmy Haslam saying, no, wasn't me. He didn't think that they would take him. He mentioned Friday night. If you would ask me, I would have said that we weren't going to take him. He said they had a conversation. I don't know if he's totally denying it, because then he's saying that he sat down with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. Now he's putting it on Andrew Berry specifically and saying Andrew Berry made that pick. But in the same breath, he's saying he sat in with those guys. So I don't know what to make of it. I would say that Jimmy Haslam had a hand in it. Just my read on the situation. Was it just Jimmy Haslam that made the pick? No, I don't think so. Still a surprising pick. But I think that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski at that point in the draft were like, hey, let's give it a shot. And I continue to contend. There's so much noise coming out of Cleveland that Shador's fourth on the depth chart. And then ESPN Cleveland's putting out graphics that Shador hasn't thrown an incomplete pass in practice in a month and a half. Like, I know that's impossible, but every time I see that graphic, I'm like, Shador's like 9 for 9. It's just the madness that is preseason. Like, we put too much into it. I'm telling you that Shador Sanders is going to play games. Anybody that says that Shador Sanders is going to get cut, I don't know where they're getting this from. He's going to play. Because I think that he is the most talented football player or most talented quarterback on the Cleveland Browns roster. And that's going to matter at some point. Maybe it's cut down day. Maybe it's when they begin the season. At some point, people will get on board with the idea that Shador is the best hope they've got for the future. And what are you playing for this year that you're not willing to see that? Joe Flacco will start, but it will not be Dylan Gabriel. That's it. And I don't even think Kenny Pickett's going to be on the Cleveland Browns by the start of the season. Whether it's a cut or a trade, I don't think that Kenny Pickett's going to be on the roster. But for the quarterbacks on the roster now, if the Browns have some hope for the future, it lies in the right arm of Shador Sanders. It's not Dylan Gabriel, and it's certainly not Joe Flacco at an advanced age. It's Shador. One thing, too, on Shador that I want to mention. So Deion Sanders had a chat with Michael Irvin and said that while Shiloh invited Deion to come out and watch him at Buccaneers training camp, Shador told him to stay away. That's interesting to me. And it's also a positive thing, because I do think a big reason why Shador Sanders fell in the draft like he did was because of the celebrity status, because of his dad. Because he wouldn't be a player that would just fit in and blend in and just do the work. And Shador telling Deion, no, you don't need to come out and watch me at practice, I think speaks to Shador Sanders understanding that. He's got to try to make it through on his own. And while I believe that Shedeur Sanders is the most talented quarterback that the Browns have on their roster and believe that he's going to be starting games for the Browns this season, he does have to earn that by putting in the work. And he does, to a lesser extent, have to earn it by just being one of the guys in that quarterback room. And when he brings his dad around and when the cameras come around and the bright lights come around, that's not helpful to Shedeur's cause. So I do think it's notable that Deion's telling Michael Irvin that Shedeur doesn't want him to come out to camp. Not in a stay away from me, Dad thing, but it's just, Dad, I got to do this. I got to be Shedeur Sanders. I can't be Deion's son right now. I think that's the right mentality to have. 719-24-7, 1313. Back with more Drive Time Sports after this. Switchbacks FC in action Friday night against Lexington SC. It'll be Next Generation night. Great night to bring the kids out. If you have kids, I'm not saying that they are a requirement to be at Widener Field on Friday. But if you are interested in being there, I have a pair of tickets. For the 13th texter to text Switchbacks and their name to 719-247-1313. That's one pair, 2 tickets to Friday night's game, Switchbacks and Lexington. And if you do not win or you need more tickets, switchbacksfc.com is the place to go. Something is happening. I think it's either something's happening to me or something's happening to Hollywood. Because last night, the boys wanted me to take them to see Fantastic Four. And for the third time in one calendar year, not even in one calendar year, like in 2 months, I have thought 3 movies were outstanding. 4 movies. So is this me or is, and you can answer this, if you've been seeing some of the movies this year, are they getting better or is it just me? Because I think that Fantastic Four movie may have saved Marvel. I was about out. I was almost out on that whole universe. Like, I'm done. And I saw that movie last night. I'm like, this may save the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I thought it was awesome. The casting was terrific. I thought every one of those actors that played the Fantastic Four were great. I like that, Johnny Storm wasn't Mimbo like he was in the original Fantastic Four movie. Like, he had a real purpose and not just, hey, I'm Sue Storm's brother. I get to tag along in our adventures. Thought the dude, and I don't watch The Bear, but the guy that plays the Thing is from The Bear, right? The show about the chefs that everybody loves so much. I thought he was really funny. So I thought the casting was on point. The story was good. And it was a lot like Superman in that we didn't go through the long, boring origin story stuff. We don't need it anymore. We know all these stories. We know Cosmic Cloud altered their DNA. Like, we know the story of the Fantastic Four. And that's not a spoiler because they don't even they barely mention it. But we know why they are the way they are. We know the story of Superman. Do we need to see him being sent off of Krypton by his parents again? That's what I loved about both of these movies is like they started with the understanding that the backstory. Now let's get into it. And it allowed for, even though the movie was less than 2 hours long, it still felt like they got a lot in. And that's what I didn't like about the Thunderbirds is that they took so long getting to the good part. And I don't want to spoil, I know it's been forever, and if you haven't seen Thunderbirds, you're probably never going to. But I still don't want to spoil anything, but they got to the good part, and then 10 minutes later, the movie was over. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. With Fantastic Four, I didn't feel that way. It got right into the storyline. I thought it was good. So as long as Marvel is focusing on them, if they are in some ways the new Avengers, I think that maybe Marvel has a chance here with their new phase or whatever they're in. But I thought Fantastic Four was great. I thought that the new Superman movie was great. I thought the new Mission Impossible movie was great. And I am most happy to report that I saw Ballerina and it was phenomenal. So we talked about this a few weeks ago. Mission Impossible and the John Wick series still did not miss on a single movie. Much more credit to Tom Cruise, obviously, because he made way more movies that were Mission Impossible than Keanu did with John Wick. But rare is the movie series with 4 or more that they don't have one miss. And I'm glad that I watched Ballerina and came away going, nope, every John Wick movie is awesome. They're all great. Every Mission Impossible movie is good. And I think that let's not just Fantastic Four and what it means for Marvel. Let's take Superman as well. Are superhero movies back? Are they going to get good again? Because they have not been good for so long. So if you haven't seen Fantastic Four, do it. It's good. Ballerina, Superman, new Mission Impossible. And don't get me wrong, I haven't liked every movie I've seen. Just talked about Thunder. I did not enjoy Thunderbirds. Thunderbolts. Why I keep calling it Thunderbirds? That's something different. It was maybe because I didn't like that movie that much, so I'm not going to call it by its proper name. So if you're looking for movie recommendations, there's a few movie recommendations. Up next for me is going to be The Naked Gun, and I have hyped this movie up. This will be the ultimate test because Superman, I went in with relatively high expectations. Fantastic Four, I went in with actually pretty low expectations. The new Naked Gun with Liam Neeson and Roland Vargas, who I do the Switchbacks games with, and I have talked about this off air a lot. We're both very excited about this movie and have started to get to the point where we're worried that it's not actually going to be good. And I saw a trailer last night before the Fantastic Four, which was Liam Neeson talking about supporting comedy and bringing comedy back. And it showed, clips from Anchorman and Tommy Boy and all of these classic, hilarious comedies. And you're going to put your new Naked Gun movie up with those? Like, that's... Like, I get what they were getting at because we don't have enough, like, really funny comedy movies anymore. But if you're going to put Chris Farley on my screen and you're going to put Anchorman on my screen and then go Naked Gun reboot, Naked Gun remake, makes the expectations go much higher. So that movie comes out on Friday. So there you go. Little movie recommendation for you. Fantastic Four. Good. 719-247-1313. We'll get back to the sports after the top of the hour with the 3 stories that are driving the show here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on your Tuesday. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, listening on the Extra Sports 1300 app, or you're watching the show on social media. I do very much appreciate your patronage. If you'd like to take your game to the next level and interact with the show, be my guest. Literally. 719-247-1313. That is the phone and the text line. You can use either to get your thoughts in, like perhaps thoughts about the three stories that are driving the show today. All right, here is story number one.
The biggest thing for me was being able to be here and, bring back, the years that Broncos fans have known. The organization has such a long historic tradition of being successful. And you all know that, I've been here through the thick and the thin. And, there's a lot of promise on the other side of the horizon here.
That is Broncos wide receiver Courtland Sutton, who is scheduled to be a bit wealthier as we move through his career here, fresh off of signing that 4-year, $92 million extension. Just furthering the idea that Courtland Sutton is a Bronco through and through. He loves it here. He never let the fact that they didn't give him an extension temper his enthusiasm. This guy's been committed, and he's an easy guy to root for. And he's an easy guy to celebrate getting the extension that he received yesterday. But from Courtland Sutton's perspective, it's not like he can't find gainful employment elsewhere in the NFL. After this season was up, maybe he could have made a few bucks more somewhere else. You know how free agency drives up the price. But I believe him when he's like, hey, I've stuck through. It's not what he said, but the emotion behind it is, hey, I've stuck through some pretty rough, lean years. It's getting good. I want to be a part of it. And it's that mentality. It's especially his mentality as the Broncos were building these things up that I think made a real impression on Sean Payton to go, yeah, this is a guy I want to keep around. As he purged so much of the roster, Courtland Sutton remained. And he's going to remain for the next couple of years at least, and we'll see where this thing goes. But Courtland Sutton not entertaining the thought of playing for another team, and he won't have to worry about that. And I think by the time, if he sees this contract all the way through, I think his prime years, he will be a Bronco. We legislate these things. What do you view someone as? No matter what Courtland Sutton does after he's a Bronco, whenever that might be, he's going to be viewed as a Bronco. And I think there is going to be a fair amount of people inside Broncos country that want Courtland Sutton when all is said and done, because his numbers are going to rank up there. Signing 3 contracts with one team, playing as long as he has for the Denver Broncos, he's going to have some numbers that are going to put him up in near McCaffrey, Rod Smith, Demaryius Thomas. And I think you add that plus how loyal Courtland Sutton has been and how good of a teammate he's been, leader, and all this other stuff. I think there are going to be people that want to put him in the Ring of Fame, even without winning a Super Bowl. Now, I think some of them believe Cortland Sutton will win a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. But he'll be an interesting one when we get to it. Because I think we will have that conversation. He has endeared himself to Broncos fans, has been committed. He's endeared himself to Sean Payton, so he's got some staying power on this iteration of the Broncos. It will be an interesting conversation once we get there. But for now, it's Cortland Sutton's unquestioned number one wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and now he's getting money that he deserves, given that he is the number one receiver on the Denver Broncos. Let's stick with the Broncos and another aspect of their offense for story number 2.
And we've got to be more explosive in that area. And so we first look at ourselves, the scheme and are we doing it the way we want to? And then we're looking at who are we asking to do it with. And obviously we've added some players in the running back room, and we're going to be much improved in that area.
And they might be changing up the scheme a little bit, as Sean Payton alluded to there. Garrett Bowles yesterday talking about the outside run scheme that maybe the Broncos have a bit of an emphasis on. So if this Broncos team, in order to be more explosive, to get bigger chunk plays in the run game, is going to start to employ this a little bit more, I think it fits what Jaleel McLaughlin does, certainly. I think it fits J.K. Dobbins. I think it fits R.J. Harvey. I don't know how much this fits Audric Estime. As we move along, one of the players that you were almost certain would get a bigger role with the Denver Broncos in this year than he did last year, Audric Estime, all of a sudden there's these factors that are working against him. How crowded the running back room has gotten this offseason is part of it. But if it's going to be an outside run scheme here for the Denver Broncos a bit more, I don't know that totally fits Audric Estime. Already a guy that I think is lower on the depth chart. That some of the things that the Broncos liked about Audric Estime, R.J. Harvey has. And R.J. Harvey has other things that Audric Estime doesn't. You bring in the veteran J.K. Dobbins. You have Jaleel McLaughlin as kind of a different pace to your running back room. As we get closer to the preseason games, I don't know that there is a Bronco that I can identify right now that these preseason games are more important for than Audric Estime. There are other guys that they're important, but for him, he just, every day that goes by, he seems like the odd man out. Now, the more important thing is that the Broncos have some new ideas on how to get the running game going. No matter who the running back is that they would prefer to run this scheme. And we know that the Broncos have to get the run game going more. You're going to have to keep defenses more honest. They're going to have to be able to use the play action game with Bo Nix more this season to protect him. So run game, important for any football team, but given where the Broncos are right now with Bo Nix entering year 2, with teams ready to focus their game plan on Bo Nix, they got to be able to get a running game going. New ideas, new people, no bad ideas at this point. As long as they're new ideas and new people. And it seems like the Broncos have a bit of both here as they begin training camp. Story number 3 today. This is certainly not a fun story, but this is a relevant story given what we talked about a lot yesterday. And it just kind of illustrates the bigger point I was making. Because last night, Ryan Sandberg, Cubs legend, baseball legend, passed away. And it just further underscored how fortunate Deion Sanders is and how important it is if you can. And I have no reason to think that I haven't seen anything saying Ryan Sandberg caught this late or did anything wrong. So that's not what I'm saying. But for every Deion Sanders, unfortunately, there is a Ryan Sandberg. And there are others that we don't know their names. But Ryan Sandberg, certainly when I think of the Chicago Cubs, I think of him. Right? Obviously, if you are if you have baseball knowledge and history of baseball, you think of Ernie Banks, right? He's Mr. Cub. But for me growing up, it's like, for better or worse, when I think of the Chicago Cubs, Mark Grace, Sammy Sosa, Kerry Wood, and Mark Pryor, I kind of lump in together, and Ryan Sandberg. And, Ryan Sandberg playing the position we kind of downplay guys at that position. Oh, we'll just move this guy. Maybe he's not good enough to play third or good enough to play short. We'll move him to second base. That's what my high school coach did to me. I played second base because I was very limited. Ryan Sandberg did not play second base because he was limited. He was a fantastic baseball player, had a bevy of tools. And I mentioned, Mark Grace, Sammy Sosa, some of these other Cubs. If we did the word association, not just based on this tragic news, but if you did word association with me and I had to pick one player, it would be Ryan Sandberg every time. And as beloved of a player for a franchise and a fan base that beloves more than anybody else. But it just, in less than a 24-hour period, one day, in the morning, it was the amazing story of Deion Sanders beating cancer. And by the time I get home last night, it's the complete opposite. It's the tragedy of a significant figure in sports history succumbing to his own battle, losing his own battle. Take your thoughts, if you're a Cub fan or a baseball fan, on the passing of Ryan Sandberg. I'm not a Cubs fan, certainly, but I know that fan base. I know what Ryan Sandberg meant to the fan base. So if you're a Cubs fan, want to hear from you. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to call or text into the show. Ryan Sandberg passing away. When I think of Ryan Sandberg, I think of, well, I should put it this way. When I think of the Cubs, I think of Ryan Sandberg. That's probably the first name that pops up. Brett points out Billy Williams for a lot of people might be one of those guys as well. Brett, Cubs fan, says Sandberg kept to himself, kept his head down, hit rockets, and caught everything near him. He went 500 chances without an error. That's not anything that happens today. He also never endorsed anything that would put him in the spotlight. He could go out to dinner in Chicago and people would respect him and his privacy. Yeah, by all accounts, good dude, great baseball player. But it goes into what we were talking about yesterday with Deion Sanders. Unfortunately, it seems far too often, and maybe it's just the way the news cycle is, but it just, what Deion Sanders did seems like it's rare. And that's beating cancer. So that was tough. I mean, the same day that Deion Sanders is talking about beating cancer and everybody's like, yeah, that's awesome. And then another sports legend that meant a lot to a lot of people, unfortunately lost his battle with this. Take your thoughts on Ryan Sandberg if you wish. 719-247-1313. Moving forward for the Denver Broncos now, Courtland Sutton's extension is done. Chris Thomason of the Gazette tweeted out that a source says there haven't been any negotiations between the Broncos and John Franklin Myers, and that the Broncos are focused on Zach Allen and Nick Benito when it comes to contract extensions. It has, with all due respect, that hasn't even been an extension I've talked about. And that's not to say that John Franklin Myers isn't a good player. But there's a couple of different things. Is he more important to the Denver Broncos than the other three guys? No. He's not. And there's this notion that you can't pay everybody. You have to prioritize. And clearly the Broncos are. I was actually surprised that they brought back DJ Jones. Like interior defensive linemen, it's not a priority. Unless you happen to be that beast that played for the LA Rams. There are other places that you need to invest your money. And I'm not saying that John Franklin Myers isn't good at what he does. And he was a steal. And I probably don't talk enough about him. I admit that. But I mean, you're talking about even on the defensive side, Benito and Allen are more, and Benito to me is way ahead of Zach Allen in terms of the importance of the Broncos getting a deal done. Yeah, John Franklin Myers, it looks like it's going to be the Courtland Sutton type route thing. Maybe they do a little tweaking of his current deal. But he's got to wait. Good player, absolutely, but everybody's got to have priorities. And the Broncos look to have the right priorities. Is Courtland Sutton more valuable than Nick Benito? I just asked myself an interesting question. I think you can certainly make an argument that he is, because this whole thing, as some people are talking Super Bowl and AFC West title, I'm focused on, can they get Bo Nix developed to where he's a franchise quarterback? And he's got to have his number one receiver. So I think you could certainly make the argument that Courtland Sutton more important to the Denver Broncos than Nick Bonito, because he's more important to Bo Nix. But also, I think that Courtland Sutton's deal is a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to get done. He's now the 19th highest paid wide receiver. I promise you, Nick Bonito, when he signs his extension, is not going to be the 19th highest paid pass rusher. So it's a little bit more complicated. And there is a little bit of, it's Courtland Sutton's turn. Like, he was a good soldier last year, showed up, put in the work, was not a distraction, all of that kind of stuff, played under, a lame duck year in many ways, or not a lame duck year, but played under a contract that many people viewed should have been extended, right? A lot of people believe Courtland Sutton should have gotten a new contract last year. Probably Courtland Sutton believed that he deserved a new contract last year. But I think it was Courtland Sutton's turn. I think how close he is in his orbit to Bo Nix is part of this. Easier deal to get done, closer to Bo Nix's orbit, which is the most important thing with the Denver Broncos. But I that doesn't surprise me. Good bit of reporting, certainly, from Chris Thomason, but it doesn't surprise me. I have to be reminded about John Franklin Myers' contract situation. Not because he's not a good player. Again, I want to emphasize that. He's good at what he does. Down on the priority list. Which extension would you like to see the Broncos get done now? Benito, Allen, or I'll throw in John Franklin Myers. 719-247-1313. Don't forget about our question of the day as well. Who will lead the Broncos in rushing this season? J.K. Dobbins, Jaleel McLaughlin, R.J. Harvey, or Bo Nix? Take a break. Oh, before I do that, want to make sure that I let you know about the national keyword that is active right now for our VIP flyaway to see Riot Fest in Chicago this September. You want to see Blink-182, you want to see Weezer, you want to see Jack White, you want to see Green Day, as well as many, many, many other bands of that quality. Text the national keyword Linda to 95819. That's LINDA to 95819, and you will be entered to win a VIP trip for two to Riot Fest. If you want complete contest rules, go to extrasports1300.com. More Drive Time Sports right after this. Friday night, Widener Field. Be there as the Switchbacks take on Lexington SC at 7 p.m. It is Next Generation Night presented by Amentum, honoring the future of our community and the next wave of Switchbacks fans. Kickoff, again, 7 o'clock. Fireworks afterwards. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. There was a fair amount of fireworks on Saturday at Widener Field during the match, which is, for me, the fireworks that I care most about. No disrespect to anyone who enjoys the fireworks after the match. I'm not really paying attention to the fireworks after the match, but during the match, very much. And how about the week for Quincy Huerman? So, Switchbacks midfielder celebrates 25th birthday early last week. That's cool. Family comes into town. That's cooler. Dude goes out and scores a brace, and not just a brace, scores 2 bangers and gets named to the team of the week. Team of the round is what they call it because it was in the Jägermeister Cup. What a week for Quincy. That was a cool moment too, seeing him run over to the near side, the side that our broadcast booth is on, and to see him embracing his family and stuff. And a terrific game for him too. And everything about that game is just, look, it's the Jägermeister Cup. They didn't end up making it out of the group stage. But this is a team that is, and Stephen Hogan, the sporting director of the club, told Roland and I this in our post-match conversation. Like, they got 14 weeks of playoffs coming up. Like, that's the way they're looking at it. They are, that match, as fun as it was, and as great of a result as it was, did not help them move up the standings because it wasn't a USL Championship League match. Even the match that they won the previous week against Birmingham was a league match, and they still didn't move up the standings. So it just further drives home the point that the Switchbacks just got to keep winning. They got to keep winning, because there are going to be nights that even when they get 3 points, they're not going to move up the standings. But if they win enough, then they will. Right? And that's the mentality of this team. And what you hope out of the weekend is just that this is a team that has started to figure some things out. James Chambers has been, and he's shared this with me. And so as Quincy, I'm not betraying a trust. You've heard these comments if you have listened to past Switchbacks broadcasts. Like, James Chambers is hard on Quincy because he believes that Quincy has a lot of potential. And he got the goal, coincidentally, in the Jägermeister Cup against El Paso. And you thought for a second, okay, here he goes. And then he hadn't scored since. Now he gets 2 against Texoma over the weekend. Hopefully that's a guy figuring it out. In some of the lineup combinations that James Chambers has put together the last couple of weeks, there's some different ideas out there. They get Brennan Creek on the 25-day contract. And what was interesting about our conversation with Hoagie after the game was that they like Brennan Creek a lot. This is not, hey, let's take a flyer on this guy. So he's going to be a maybe not the most relied upon player, but a player that you're going to see regularly. And I don't think that the Switchbacks are done making moves for the stretch run of the season. Will they win every match from here on out? I would say it's a good bet that they won't. But they have that mentality. It's not going to be, in this match is a home game on Friday, so it's they expect to get 3 points. But even when they go out on the road, the mentality is we got to get 3. Early in the season, you could say, you know what, we get a result, we get 1 point, okay, cool. Switchbacks aren't in that position. There's a bit of desperation with this team now. Now that after that break after the 4th of July, that midway point of the season, pseudo break that the Switchbacks took, reality, I think, set in a little bit with this team that we got to go. I mean, it's not like they haven't been trying to string together results, that they haven't been trying to get things going, but now the reality sets in of we got less than a half a season now. We didn't get done the first half, and we're already like a couple matches into the second half. Maybe that will spark the Switchbacks forward. They certainly have that desperation, and they certainly have the mentality that's 3 points every week. But what you hope out of the Texoma match is just that, especially Quincy. I mean, Tyler Clegg's goal was phenomenal as well. He got named to the team of the round as well. His goal was great. But especially for Quincy, because I think he's one of the guys, you think about him and Jonas Fjellberg and Yosuke Hanya and Wante Hada. These guys were the guys that they're betting on, I think, to generate offense. Sure, they bring in a Marco Micheletto, who's an important addition for them. Now they bring in a Brendan Creek, who they really like. But those guys were the ones that they were kind of betting on coming into the year. They were the ones that were going to generate opportunities. So perhaps the now 25-year-old Quincy Heuerman will parlay that performance against Texoma into another good one Friday night against Lexington. And maybe we'll see you out there. Again, switchbacksfc.com is where you go to get those tickets. One thing that I mean, I kind of filed this under no duh, but there is a little bit of a surprise to it. So neither Caitlin Clark nor Angel Reese played in this Sky versus Fever game, which would be like death to that WNBA broadcast. Like, you're telling me no Caitlin and no Angel Reese? Because I know the battle lines have been drawn and you got to pick one or the other. But Angel Reese is a star. She's just not close to as big a star as Caitlin Clark is. But she is a star in and of herself. And that the two of them getting together generates a lot of interest. There's nothing, that league doesn't have anything better than Angel Reese going up against Caitlin Clark for every reason that you can imagine. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's their marquee matchup. And to not have either one of those players, it's not good news for the WNBA. However, so by comparison, the season opener got 2.5 million people. They lost 1 million basically from that audience. 1.5 million people watched. A Caitlin Clark less Fever team and an Angel Reese less Chicago Sky team. 1 million fewer people. Not great news, but I'm actually surprised they pulled a 1.5. It's interesting. You almost wonder, I certainly think a lot of people that made their way to the broadcast were certainly expecting to see one, the other, or both. But I think the WNBA might be thinking, maybe this shows that they came looking for the marquee matchup. And before they realized that neither one were playing, they watched some basketball and went, oh, this is good, though. And that's the next stage of the evolution for this league, is that just like any other league, you're going to show up for the stars. And for the WNBA, it's Caitlin Clark. That's why you're tuning in. But if she's not there, is the product good enough that you stick around? And maybe the numbers over the weekend say there's some hope with that. So I found that number to be interesting because people were predicting like 0. Maybe not 0, but lower than 1.5 million. Once they realized no Angel Reese and no Caitlin Clark, good for them. Speaking of sports on television or pseudo sports on television, saw that TNT is adding the Savannah Bananas. I can't wrap my head around this phenomenon. Like, I pride myself on kind of understanding these things. I don't get it. But this is massive. The Savannah Bananas and now TNT. It's going to be on. I mean, it's from a business perspective, it's a phenomenal story if you learn about the path they took to get here. But I just talked about, the WNBA. I understand the phenomenon of Caitlin Clark. I get it. I understand the environment that she's stepping into to cause this phenomenon, and what about her creates this phenomenon. I get that one. Savannah Bananas, I don't understand how. I'm not saying that it's a bad entertainment product, but it's like the Beatles are coming to town. I don't get it. And I don't want to put everyone has their own thing, but it's just, I watch it. I see it. It's not like I haven't given it a try. I'm like, not interested. So many people are. Good for them. But TNT now going to see Savannah Bananas on True TV and HBO Max. Crazy. And I like the Harlem Globetrotters. Maybe it's just with basketball, I think it lends itself to kind of that kind of quote unquote sporting event. And like with the baseball, it just doesn't move me in the way that watching the Harlem Globetrotters does. Not everybody is going to like everything. And me especially. I'm usually the outlier on this stuff, but yeah, good for the Savannah Bananas. What a great story. I don't understand. So many people go and watch them. It's okay. I don't have to understand everything. Oh, before I go, you know who understands? Hopefully you understand what I've been telling you about Low T Center. If you're feeling wiped out all the time, you get no energy, you can't focus, kind of dragging through the day, that may not just be you getting older. That may be signs of low testosterone. And here in Colorado Springs, Low T Center, they're the go-to experts for getting your energy and really, if you think about it, your life back. Testosterone test right now, it's free. So I don't know what anybody's waiting for. It's free to take the test. Maybe it's not low T. But if it is, you wouldn't spend anything on the test, and now you're in the right place to get treatment. You could get white glove care at the clinic or get medically monitored treatment shipped right to your door. And if you spread the good word and you refer a friend, you can both get a $250 credit when you start treatment. That's for men and women. So take the first step. Visit fixmylowt.com. That's fixmylowt.com, and let the local pros at Low T Center help you feel like yourself again. Albert says you're not a member of the Savannah Bananas Sour Grapes. That's right. That's why. That's why I don't get the Savannah Bananas. Harlem Globetrotters let me play with them. They welcome me with open arms. Savannah Bananas haven't. That you're right. I tried out a while back, and they're like, no. Your dance moves are just not good enough. Your baseball is. But dancing's not. So you just didn't quite make the cut. That's what it is. Albert, you figured it out. Good on you. That will do it for the show today. Appreciate your patronage. Enjoy your evening. Back at 3 tomorrow here on Extra Sports 1300.